G'day from the West, Lucas here, and welcome back to another Footy West video. And as you can see behind me today, we're going to be going through West Coast's list right now, and I'm going to be making some predictions about how I reckon all their seasons are going to go. So before we get into it, if you're new here, if you're a returning viewer, make sure you give us a little like and give us a subscribe, turn on the bell so you never miss any new content. But let's get straight into things, and I'm going to do this in two parts because I know if it was me, my attention span wouldn't be able to watch probably an hour-long video about this. Or maybe it would, maybe the footy nuff would come out in me, I don't know. But these are the first 20 players and we'll get to the rest in the next video. But let's get on with it. And the way this is going to work today, I don't want to be here for ages and ages, hours upon end. So we'll go through everybody. I've got the first 20 players on the list here. And I'll say a bit about how I think they're going to go. And I'll give them a prediction out of 10 about how I think their season will go. And then we'll come back to this video at the end of the season and see how I did and see if I was accurate and I was on the right track with how these players went. So we'll get straight into it. I've got three colors here, okay? I've got red. You get written in red if you're eliminated from the season, really. I mean, Dom Sheed, he's out all year. I think he's got a list spot opened up now in his place. But you get red if you get about 4 or under. You get green if you get like 7 or more. And you get orange in the middle, or if there's a question mark, because there's probably going to be a couple of players that I don't know how they're going to go. But I'll try to give everyone a grading. So that's how we're going to go here. So we'll start from the top of the list. We got Liam Ryan, and I don't know if this is unpopular or not for me to say, but he looks very fit. He looks very fit and he looks like he's enjoying his footy. I don't know if he lost his love for it, but he definitely looks like he's enjoying it much more than he has in recent seasons, which is a very, very promising sign. So I'm predicting he'll spend more time in the midfield, I reckon, than he has done before. We saw glimpses of it last year, but I think he's going to spend more time rotating between midfield and forward. Obviously, he'll play a lot of time forward still, but I think he can be a secret weapon to be unlocked in the middle. So the green's coming out. I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. I reckon this will be one of his better seasons as of late. Maybe a 7.5. Let's go with 7.5 for Liam Ryan. So Liam Ryan gets a 7.5, and we move on to number 2, Jake Waterman. Now, this is an interesting one. I think this could go one of two ways. Number one, he could have another excellent season and build on what he was working on last year and go even better, make top 3 Coleman, maybe win the Coleman, or Australian. So I think there's potential for that. Or number 2, I think maybe last season could have been a sugar hit and he will fall back down to earth. So there's two ways that could go. But I am backing him in. I think he will be able to go to that next level, finish top 3 in the Coleman. I think he finished top 5 in the Coleman last year. I'll have to double check that. But I think he was high up there in the Coleman last year, and I think he can be even higher this year. So I reckon he can make that next step, and he will go to another gear and really hit his straps. He's 27, I think, this year. He's really hitting that's the time where you really hit your straps. So I'm gonna go and give him an 8.5. But I reckon if he ends up in top 3 Coleman or wins it or whatever by the end of the season, when I re-rank everyone's seasons, I reckon he could make a 9 or a 10. Now, Liam Baker, and boy does he look good. I know in the practice match, it's just match sim. It doesn't really count for much. It's just a first look at all the teams in the season. But in that practice match, he looked very, very good. And he fit into the team very nicely. And I think he'll play very well under Andrew McQualter. I think he's been a very good recruit for the club, for leadership, to rally around the troops. So I'm giving him an 8. I just reckon he's going to have a really good season, a really good first season in the blue and gold. Then we go Dom Sheed, obviously eliminated for this season, so we'll move to Jaden Hunt. Now, Jaden Hunt is an interesting one. The orange is coming out. I'm not sure. He has a lot of these players that I'm going to talk about, that we're going to go through, they have potential. they have potential to be really good or really bad. And I know that's literally every player. But Jaden Hunt's a funny one. He's had some good seasons. I think his first season that he came across, he was very good. And then there's like last season, he sort of faded a bit into obscurity, but he still kept his spot and still performed well. He wasn't quite hitting the heights that he was before. I'm gonna give him a 5. I reckon he'll have another sort of stagnated season maybe. Obviously, when I give these players 5s and 4s and 3s and 2s and 1s, I am not hoping for them to get that. I am not hoping for that to happen. I want everyone to be getting 10s and 9s and 8s, but you gotta be realistic. Now, here we go. I'm gonna say this is the first big call of the video. Elliot Yeo, I've got the green out. I think he's gonna have a brilliant season. And I know he's injured and he's probably gonna take some time to get back. But I reckon once he gets back, he is going to be brilliant. I just think he's really gonna flourish, especially from having Elijah Hewitt back in the side. I don't think they have played together much at all. I mean, Elliot Yeo was injured a lot in Elijah's first year, and then last year, obviously, Elijah missed the whole season. So they haven't had much time together, so I think that's gonna be something that's really exciting for Elliot Yeo to look forward to work with Harley and Elijah at the same time, should they all stay fit. So I reckon once he comes back, he will be very good. He might take a couple games. I reckon he'll probably be back, let's say about, hopefully round 5, maybe 6, 7. But once he is back, he might take a few games, but I reckon by round 10 at the very latest, he will be hitting his straps, and in the back end, this middle back end of the season, he will be going A game. I'm gonna give him a 7. I'm predicting a 7 out of 10 season for Elliot Yeo. And it's a 7, not like an 8 or a 9, because he misses some time at the start. We move on to Ruben Jimby, and that's another interesting one. He's sort of found his place in the back line now, and I think that's the right place for him. I think he will flourish, he will play his best footy there, and he can sort of play as a tall or a medium-sized backman, and he can play on the small forwards as well. So I think that's something that he's really got going for him that not a lot of guys, particularly in our side, can do. So again, I'm predicting quite a good season for him. The thing is, I don't know if he's gonna have a better season than Elliot Yeo, but I think he'll have a better season than Jaden Hunt. Maybe we'll give him a 7 out of 10 as well. So we've gone with the 7 for Ruben, and now we get to Elijah Hewitt, and he looks good as well. We saw flashes in his first season while he was playing, and then obviously in the practice match there were a few flourishes of Elijah Hewitt excitement that we can look forward to. So I reckon he's primed for a big season. It's the comeback season for Elijah. So I'm gonna go out on another bold call here. I'll make a call saying that Elijah is gonna have an 8.5 season. So I've given him the 8 out of 10 for that one. Then we get to none other than Harley Reid. Now, this is also a very, very interesting one. His first half of the year, last season, was excellent. After the suspension, he sort of fell back down to earth. By no means was he rubbish. Don't get me wrong, he was still playing good footy. It just wasn't to the level that we had seen previously. And can he get back to that is probably one of the biggest questions of the season throughout the whole competition, not just the Eagles. I think if he does, it will be a 9 out of 10 season. I do think that. And I think if he gets to his best, West Coast will win 1 or 2 more games than they would if he wasn't. But in saying that, one person doesn't make up a team. So it just depends really. How I think he will go, I think the second year for players is usually a very interesting one. I think they show games where they're at their best and games where they're sort of at their average. I think he'll probably have more good games than not good games. I don't think he's really played a bad game in his career so far, to be honest. But I think he'll definitely have a few games that are right up there to remember with individual performances. I reckon I'm going to go with an 8 for Harley Reid as well. And then Tyler Brockman. Now, this is interesting as well. I think I've said interesting about 10 million times this video, but it is. If Tyler Brockman cracks into the side, I reckon he does very well. But the question is he a walk-up start? Will he start? Is he a best 23 player right now? Or does he only get an opportunity if someone is performing terribly or if there's an injury? Is he a best 23 player? I'm not sure, I don't know. However, if given the opportunity, from what we saw in the practice match, I think he looks a really good prospect for this season. Obviously didn't have the season that he wanted to last year, but I think he's right back into his footy now, and I think if he cracks in, he will do well. So now, as you can see there, I've gone with 6.5 for Tyler Brockman. I reckon he'll have an all right season. Definitely, I reckon he'd probably have a better season than Jaden Hunt. But thinking of it, I'm probably a bit harsh on Jaden Hunt, to be honest. I reckon he's better than a 5 out of 10, but can't change it now. It's just, I don't know. I really don't know how he's going to go. Now we move to this side of the board, and we've got Tim Kelly first up. I don't know. That's the best way to put it. I really don't know what to expect from Tim Kelly. We've obviously seen a lot about how he's fallen out of love with footy. However, I do think him playing in the Indigenous All-Stars has sort of helped him out a bit. I think it's helped him find his love for the game again. I think that was a very fun occasion for him. He enjoyed it, I think. So that's a good thing for Eagles fans and for Tim Kelly. So I'm not sure how he's going to go. He's always obviously up there with like the John Worsfold medal count. He's consistently doing things. I don't know if I'd say consistently good, but he's consistently contributing at times throughout games. So I reckon he'll probably have a 7 out of 10 season. So that's a 7 for Tim Kelly. Now, Oscar Allen, the co-captain, is an interesting one as well. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how Jake Waterman and Oscar Allen work together in tandem. We haven't seen much of it at all, except for maybe the back end of last season. They worked okay. I think Jake Waterman probably did most of the heavy lifting. Allen was still battling some soreness with the knee, I think. But this season, hopefully, fingers crossed, Jake will be ready for round 1. And Oscar looks fit and firing. So we'll hopefully have 2 damaging key forwards fit and firing, ready to go. And hopefully we can start to see them work together well, like we saw Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins do for Geelong. So I think if that gets going, it'll rub off on each other. I think if they are working together well, they will both perform better than they would if they weren't. So for Oscar Allen, I think I'm going to go with about 7.5. Again, he's another consistent performer. He constantly will contribute in games with little things. He'll have some really good games where he's contributing heaps, some lesser games where he's contributing once or twice and being shut out a bit. But he's constantly doing things like Tim Kelly. So I'll give him a 7.5. I reckon he'll be a bit better than Tim Kelly. But again, time will tell and we'll see at the end of the year. Now we go to Noah Long. I actually seen a couple of people's best 23 lineups for the Eagles, and they haven't actually got Noah Long in them, which I find interesting. I don't know how many. I definitely saw one that didn't have him in it. There might have been a couple more, but I think he should be in the side. I think he's back from injury like Elijah Hewitt. I think he's raring to go. He's got the hunger to play footy, and that's very important. So I think if he's got the hunger, and we've seen a couple crafty things that he did in the match sim, and he's got the hunger, then I think that's a very good indication that he's going to play well. So I'm backing him in. I think Noah Long is going to play very well. I know him and Jamie Cripps work closely with each other, and I reckon this could sort of be a handover season, and Noah Long takes over for Jamie Cripps. So I'm actually thinking he's going to have a really good season, Noah Long. So I'm going to give him an 8. I'm ranking his season an 8. I reckon he is going to be good. Liam Duggan, again, another solid contributor. He plays everywhere, really. I mean, he's been a backman for most of his career, but lately we've seen him go into the midfield a bit more when West Coast are a bit undermanned. And he's reliable. Sure, he's not the star of the team. He's not on the back page 30 times in a row, but he does the things that he needs to do. Sure, he makes a few errors, but don't we all? So I'm just backing this more of the same from Liam Duggan, more consistent contribution. I'm gonna go with a 7 for him as well. And looking at these scores, I'm starting to realize that I think I'm a bit optimistic about everybody, and we'll get to the end of the year and everyone will have underperformed in my rankings. But we move to Jamie Cripps, the veteran small forward, and this is a very interesting season. I tell you what, interesting, the word interesting is starting to sound really weird. I've said it so many times. But Jamie Cripps, like I said, I'm sort of seeing this season as a handover season between him and Noah Long. I don't know if he'll play every single game. I'm sure he'll get into the side at some point. I didn't have him in my starting best 23. A lot of people probably would, but I don't know if he's going to be there all year, every game. A 5.5 for Jamie Cripps. Matt Owies, another small forward. A lot of our small forwards seem to be wearing in the teens, but Matt Owies is a good prospect for us, I think. I think, like Noah Long, like Jamie Cripps, he's crafty. I don't actually know a lot about him, to be honest with you. But from what I've heard from a lot of Carlton supporters, Matt Owies is a very good player. He is a decent contributor. He will perform well when needed, and I think he's going to be valuable to this forward line. I'm going to go with a 6.5 for Matt Owies. I'm not sure about him. I think he's a good recruit, absolutely, and he definitely adds stocks, but I'm just not sure how he's going to go yet. But I still think he'll have an above average season. 6.5, not bad. Jack Graham, I was very, very sort of intrigued about why he was given number 17. Josh Kennedy, a famous number at the club. But he looks like he's bringing justice for it. He looked very impressive in the practice match. Brilliant pressure, brilliant tackling pressure stood out to me. And that's something that we've been lacking throughout the past few years. So him bringing that to the side and all the boys getting around it is very, very promising for this season. And not only that, but his leadership as well. I think he was quite highly rated, and Liam Baker, both of them at Richmond, for their leadership, particularly Baker, but Graham too. And I think that's another very important thing for the Eagles. And I think recruiting in that age bracket that Graham is and Liam Baker are, I think that is a very good decision by the recruiting team. And in terms of his performance this season, the green is out, I think that he will perform very well. I think he'll get consistent games. I think if he stays fit, he plays every game. And just his tackling pressure. I know I keep saying it, but it's something that has been lacking so long from this side. And just to see it again and everyone getting around it, led by Jack Graham, is very, very exciting. Probably with a 7 out of 10 for Jack Graham, I reckon, this year. The red. I really am not sure about Campbell Chesser, and I'm starting to get a bit concerned. I think this is about his 3rd year, and I actually think it's his 4th season. I think he was picked up in the 2021 draft, but there's not a lot of signs, if I'm honest. We've seen glimpses of him, but not enough. And AFL is a very cutthroat industry. If you are not good enough and you've had your chances, you are gone. And I think he's struggled a lot with injury, and that hasn't helped him, and that is not his fault. He hasn't been able to do much about that. But in the chances that he has had, when he's been fit enough to perform at AFL level, I don't think he's been at a standard that he should be to be playing consistent AFL footy. Sure, he's a handy player if you need a reserve, but in no world, unfortunately for Campbell, I don't think in any world that he would be in a starting 23 lineup at West Coast. Maybe at another club, perhaps he could, but at West Coast, I just don't see it. Although if he were to get his body fit and if he were to have a big pre-season, I think this pre-season again, he's been hampered by injuries, but I do think he could suit Andrew McQualter's game style. But he just has to put in the work to get to that level. So I'm expecting him to probably crack into this side once or twice. I mean, it's unrealistic to think that we'll go through the whole season with not a single injury. I mean, that's just absurd, actually. So I imagine he'll probably get 1 or 2 games, maybe 3. So will he show enough in those games? Who knows? But I reckon I'm going to go with about a 3.5 for Campbell Chesser. Brady Hough, he is so underrated. I think he's going to have a big season this year. I think he is going to the next level. He is going to start getting talked about over East. It was a lot of us here in the West that were talking about him and could see the potential and the things that were getting unlocked with Brady Hough. But I think this season is his really big season and he'll break it open. I don't know if that's bold or not, but I think he's in for a very good season. I've gone with 8 out of 10 for Brady Hough. And then the last one for today, Jeremy McGovern. Now, as far as I know, I think he's had a few little injury niggle setbacks. I think he should be ready for round 1. I actually haven't read much about the injuries lately, but as far as I know, I think he's ready for round 1, round 2. Actually, to be honest, I haven't seen much of him at all this preseason, really. But he's Mr. Reliable, he's Mr. Consistent. When he's out there, he's constantly performing, especially without Tom Barras now. That's going to be a big loss. So there will be a lot of pressure on him to stay fit. And again, it's not necessarily in a player's control to stay fit. To some extent it is, but sometimes injuries happen, it's footy. But there will be more pressure on him to stay fit and be that key back. In terms of his season, purely for the fact that whenever he's out there, he just performs and does the job, I'm going to give him a 7. And at the end of the season, that very well could be a 9. I mean, he's a John Worsfold medalist, so he could very well have another great season and stay out there for 20 odd games, and that would make me look like a fool and be awesome for him and the club. But these are the rankings that I have gone with. I'll let you have a clearer view. I've just stepped behind the camera, and I think that Jaden Hunt definitely has the potential to be better than a 5 out of 10. And then obviously you've got your young midfielders, Harley Reid, Elijah Hewitt. Can they perform to that 8 out of 10 season? Noah Long, can he perform to an 8 out of 10 season down forward as a small crafty forward? So there's a lot of questions to be answered for the Eagles, and it's exciting to be able to sort of look at these things and see how we're going to go. But I think if all my rankings are accurate, which I am 100% sure they won't be, but if some miracle happened and they were, I think it looks very good for this season. There is a lot of green there, and hopefully at the end of the season there is still a lot of green when we come back and review it. But that wraps up the first 20 players for the list. I will be back soon with the rest of the list, so make sure to stick around, check that one out. Turn on that post notification bell so you don't miss it. Subscribe, like if you enjoyed it. I hope you do enjoy it. But that rounds out my predictions. Let me know how you guys think I did in the comments. It'll be interesting to hear what you all think about our players this season. But that will wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed watching, leave a like, leave a subscribe. And yeah, I hope to see you again back soon on Footy West.